Today, we're going to look at 10 of the craziest conspiracy theories that Joe Rogan has talked about on his podcast, starting with a famous space expedition that may just be a Hollywood production. In a recent episode, Joe Rogan and Ben Askren sat down to talk about conspiracy theories, and of course they discussed 9/11, wars with Cuba, and naturally the moon landing as well.
The moon landing one's my favorite.
Really?
I got balls deep in that for years. I was completely
So you
convinced.
think they did not go to the moon?
No, I don't think that anymore.
Okay.
But you know what I think now? I think I don't know.
Though Rogan did acknowledge that he no longer believes in the conspiracy, he did shed light on some of the things that seemed a little strange.
I mean, without unmanned drones like what we have on Mars and things like that, we've never really sent a living thing out through the magnetosphere, through the Van Allen radiation belts, into deep space. Have it, I mean, there's all these possibilities of solar flares and anything that would have killed them instantly, and they just did that. And then we haven't been able to do that since 1972.
The boys then jumped into possible future visits since it's been so long since they've been there, but maybe future missions were delayed due to the damning backstory of NASA's head engineer during the space race.
Then it gets weird when you find out that Werner von Braun was a fucking Nazi.
Who?
Werner von Braun, the guy he was the head of NASA. He was the guy who organized the moon landings, and he was the head rocket guy. That guy was a legit Nazi. Like, he was wanted by the Simon Wiesenthal Center said that if he was alive today, they would prosecute him for crimes against humanity. They would hang the 5 slowest workers every day in front of his Berlin rocket factory. Oh yeah. No, 100%.
Though Rogan and Askren both admit that they do not believe the landing was fake, they did take time to look at the announcements made by NASA and poked fun at how weird the press conference was, as well as other strange ways that NASA offered proof.
The press conference from 1969 when they returned from the moon is one of the most cryptic, weird things you'll ever see. These guys look like they just stole something and they're being questioned. I've never seen a video where people look like they're more full of shit than that video of the press conference from 1969.
And if that wasn't enough to convince you, they even took the time to check out the proof that was offered as well.
There's videos of the flag moving in a non-existent breeze, which is weird too. And they try to make some logical explanations for why the flag could be moving in a vacuum, and some of it makes sense, but some of it doesn't. Homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's not him standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
That's not him standing up. You can't stand up like that.
Right, but you're on the moon, okay? So you realize you're in 1/6 Earth's gravity.
But there was nothing to make him go like this.
Exactly.
Right? You can't get up.
Whichever way you slice it, there could have been some weird things going on, but as Rogan pointed out, he knows nothing about the science behind rockets in space, and neither do we. But the next conspiracy stays down on Earth with a little-known Nazi who may not be as dead as we thought.
Because a lot of people are like, finding Hitler, get the fuck out of here. They found Hitler, he died.
Yeah, I mean,
not really?
We don't know.
Rogan invited Tim Kennedy onto a podcast episode where they started discussing the possibility that the Hitler of Forbes' top 5 worst person ever may actually still be alive. Though Rogan was not so sure, Kennedy pointed out how there is proof that the US was still searching for Hitler at the end of World War II.
And there were a bunch of specifically FBI documents that we were spending millions and millions of dollars actively searching for after the war, as was like millions of dollars. Like Hoover was like, no, send more FBI agents to South America, to North Africa, go to the Canary Islands, go to Spain, trying to find out where this guy went.
So what does that mean for the guy who supposedly killed himself in the bunker?
The Russians got the body and they got his skull. And when they brought it back to Moscow, nobody has ever been able to independently verify who and what this body is. They let one genetic test occur, and the body with the bullet holes that they said was and have said, and that's the narrative, that's the story, that's all the eyewitness accounts that are even in the vicinity of corroborating each other's testimony. Like the closest version, because none of it seems to be very accurate, is that, okay, here's Hitler's skull, and when they did the genetic testing, it's that of a 35-year-old woman. So they're like, oh, well, this isn't Hitler, but they've said for the past 80 years that this is Hitler.
Kennedy would continue saying how near the end of the war, Berlin was in complete chaos and there was no way to really know for sure what happened as everyone would have different accounts. He then goes on to say that most Nazis went to South America, mostly in Argentina, and that there's a good chance that Hitler was there as well.
But what you got in South America were isolated German-only communities. You could go into Bariloche, Argentina, and I'd be like, "Buenos dias, amigos," and they're like, "Guten Morgen." I'm like, oh.
According to him, not only is Hitler still alive, but his descendants are still kicking in Argentina as well, and they may still believe in their grandfather's ideology.
How many people are we talking about all told in South America that come out of this? I mean, tens of thousands went there, but how many German communities and how big are they?
Yeah, we maybe have 50 German communities.
50? How many people?
Few 100,000.
As crazy as that may sound, Argentina doesn't seem to be the next fascist regime, but maybe non-Aryan tourists may reconsider going there this summer. In the end, Rogan ended up asking the question that we were all thinking, and Kennedy didn't seem to have the concrete proof we need.
Are there any legitimate eyewitness accounts of Hitler in South America? Or potentially legitimate?
Absolutely, potentially.
Whoa.
Though I guess we will never know for sure if Hitler is dead or alive, there is another conspiracy theory that may also stand the test of time, and that's how the pyramids were actually built. It's been long debated that the ancient Egyptians lacked the technology necessary to build the pyramids as they are now, which has led many to believe that it was simply not them. Because of this, on one of Rogan's infamous podcast episodes, he openly discusses the possibility that maybe someone or something helped them out.
The other thing is when we talk about these ancient technologies, if we're only looking for a mere reflection of ourselves, we could overlook it completely, because I think there's evidence that exists now. I mean, some modern researchers whose work has been buried or suppressed, I think we're getting very close to rediscovering some of the things that our ancient ancestors were up to.
Though the idea of technology that uses sound to help move objects sounds super interesting, it seems the reason we can't find it is because the technology is so advanced that archaeologists wouldn't recognize it, especially since apparently the technology has been wiped from our memories.
And it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that from the human memory banks almost completely, not entirely completely, because there were survivors.
Whether that was the case or not, Graham Hancock came back to enlighten us on lost civilizations and offer some insight onto how modern day ideas of how they made the pyramids make absolutely no sense.
How long a ramp do I need with a 10-degree slope to get to 350 feet above the ground? And the answer is you need a fucking long ramp, which should still be there, because it couldn't have been a sand ramp. It would have collapsed under the weight of those stones. It had to be as massive as the pyramid itself. So this begins to seem like an absurd idea, the idea that is foisted on us by archaeology. Maybe the idea that they regard as absurd, namely that psychic powers were cultivated by ancient civilizations, that they could use powers of the human mind that we have allowed to lapse. Maybe that idea deserves further consideration.
Ancient technology seems amazing, and ancient civilizations have always been an interesting topic, especially for Rogan and Hancock specifically, as they've discussed these things before, but in places that you would never have guessed.
One of the things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on ancient maps, because we didn't discover it until 1820, and yet it's on maps drawn in the 1500s with great detail, which again were based on much older source maps that have now been lost to us.
Antarctica has been an interest for many people, as its terrifyingly cold environment would make it a hellscape for almost anyone who found themselves trapped there, but it is possible that people were there long before we ever discovered it.
The thing is the so-called Pinkerton world map. I don't know if you can find it, Jamie. Drawn, I think, in 1813 or 1818, based on the latest exploration data at that time. And where Antarctica is, yeah, that one, keep going right. It just shows a hole where Antarctica is. Because it was an honest map. Nobody had found it by then. But if you go back to, for example, the Wolsey-Wooler world map drawn in 1530 or thereabouts, you find Antarctica is present. That map shows Antarctica exactly where it should be. And it shows it, there we go, there's Antarctica at the tip of South America. just south of South Africa.
And what did they call it back then?
Well, they call it the Southern Land.
So maybe Antarctica wasn't actually discovered yet, or maybe it was being hidden from us all this time, but Hancock has his own theory, of course.
To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization that mapped the world and that left evidence of that mapping, which ancient map makers found and used and incorporated into their maps. These maps can be very confusing because they were trying to mix exploration data from their own period with data from the older maps. But when you look at these maps in depth, they're very, very intriguing.
Ancient technology and civilizations are always incredible to study, especially when sometimes there are certain things missing that could maybe answer all of the questions we have, and the next conspiracy may actually address where all the traces went. Rogan invited Jimmy Corsetti to discuss conspiracy theories, and Corsetti had one idea that would be terrifying if it were true.
It's a planet flip 90 degree, and that because of it, the Earth essentially does a standstill. The sun will basically stay in the same spot, causing heating like we've never experienced, and that the wind and the waters continue with their momentum. Because essentially the wind travels at approximately 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. So the theory is that when that event happens, it's going to be cataclysmic.
Though that may sound crazy, the sudden stop in Earth's rotation would actually cause an enormous tsunami, and Corsetti actually thinks that it might have happened before.
And here's the wild thing is that in that document it says a continental-sized tsunami being 2 miles high.
2 miles high.
Yes. And I'm like, it would make a lot of sense. Like if you look at the Bible and involving like Revelations and it's saying like
6 days.
6 days on the seventh day, God rested. In that document, it says 6 days things start simmering down a bit, and by day 7 things are starting over new. If the details discussed in it are accurate, the reason why we're not seeing the evidence of it is because it flips right back and thus masks the evidence that it ever happened.
This is called the Adam and Eve theory because it would basically be a giant reset for the Earth, leaving everything underwater. If this were to actually happen though, you can take comfort in the fact that there may indeed be an afterlife, just not the one that you heard about in Sunday school according to this next theory. On his podcast, Rogan has spoken many times about what he thinks happens after we die, and his thoughts seem to be that it doesn't go all black like some may believe, but it's not exactly pearly gates either.
The theory that many people have is that death opens up a chemical gateway in the mind, and that chemical gateway takes whatever the soul is, whatever consciousness is, and transports it into this new realm. It allows you, your conscious mind, to access this new realm, which is available to you upon death.
He talks about how psychedelics open the mind to this realm in the short term, but when we die, he believes that it will be fully available to us and that there will be a way for us to map it out.
Because it's an IV, because it's coming in a drip, it's like constant and continuous. And these people are going to the same place and they're having repeatable experiences. So instead of having like a 15-minute DMT trip, which is a lot of people have, that's like overwhelming, you can't even figure out what's going on, then it's over. Instead of that, you're going to the exact same place over and over and over again and getting more and more comfortable with it and coming back with very similar stories. Really? So yeah, it's a repeatable environment where they're encountering entities and they're trying to map it.
If that is the case, then remember that the next time you get caught with some substance on you, you can always tell the cops that you're mapping out the afterlife for everyone. It's guaranteed to get you out of cuffs. And though it may get you arrested and land you in prison, according to Rogan's next theory, you've probably already technically been there before.
Neil deGrasse Tyson explained this to me, because this is a mind and a half, that the universe is so big that not only is there another you out there that has done everything exactly as you've done, to every pause, like that pause, every pause, down to the second, an infinite number of times.
You're talking, what is it called, the infinite, in an infinite universes, there's this exact conversation happening with people look exactly like that, because infinity implies that there could be a million.
Infinite variations. There's one where you get up right now and you have to take a piss, and you run out of the room.
Or Charlemagne's there, you're here, I'm there.
This concept has been discussed before. Since there's an infinite amount of possibilities in the ever-expanding universe, eventually there will be another version of you. Though this can be pretty tough to wrap your head around, Rogan gives us an idea of the true scale of things.
When you think of infinity, we think about it as being really big. It's not. It's impossible to put in your head. The infinite infinite universes. Like the size of the universe, 14 billion light years apart, infinite numbers of those. Not only that, they think that inside every galaxy is a supermassive black hole, and inside that black hole may be another universe with hundreds of billions of galaxies, with hundreds of billions of black holes. Inside each one of those, hundreds of billions of galaxies, hundreds of billions of black holes, that it's fractal.
Long story short, don't try to think about it too much, but whenever you have a tough choice to make, remember that a version of you has probably already done it. According to this next theory though, if you do make the wrong choice, you may be able to make up for it like it never happened.
The thing that's going to change the universe is that one day someone's going to invent a time machine. And that when they invent a time machine, all time ceases to become linear.
Despite this though, Rogan's next theory of time travel means that this concept would have some rules.
You can't travel where there are no roads. So once a road gets built, then you can travel. So once a time machine gets invented, then anyone from the invention of the time machine forward to forever can come back to that moment and can go to any point in time from that moment to the end of time.
While with this theory you may not be able to prove that Hitler didn't kill himself, there are plenty of ways you could use this to your advantage.
Like as time travel gets more and more sophisticated, you can go back and forth in time while you're talking to people. You know, if you don't like what you said, you could rewind and start all over again. If you're in an argument with your wife, you can go to the library and get information and come back and go, actually, you know, Herodotus once said, and then bam, your wife thinks you're the smartest guy in the world.
Time travel may be a dream for some, but dreams for others could mean something totally different. In a podcast episode a couple years ago, while on the topic of different realities, Rogan has spoken about how he thinks there's the possibility that every time we sleep, we actually drift into a parallel universe.
What if every time you went to sleep and you woke up, you passed into a nearby and very similar universe, but not quite the same? And depending upon your choices and how you live your life, it's how you wake up and what new one you pop into on the other side. And everyone's just a little bit different. The whole world changes just a little bit each time you make a decision, one way or another. Everything changes when you wake up. You think the world is static because it is when you're awake. You have no fucking idea what's happening while you're asleep. And when you wake up again, you have this foggy recollection of the past. And that's what you're going by. You're going by every morning waking up with a foggy recollection of the past.
According to Rogan, slipping into another universe may be something that we all do, so be careful if you're a regular napper, and hopefully the universe you fall into isn't one that's lying about aliens, since that could be a possibility as well, according to Rogan. This next conspiracy is pretty bonkers, and to understand the beginning of it, it's important to know that outer space is apparently fake.
But space is fake sounds ridiculous. Like there's
something
we're
up
looking
there.
at it and it's fake. That's ridiculous. That's
just
not what
the
it means. It
Truman
means
Show.
that all the information we got about all
We're
those
off.
lights in the sky.
Yeah, something
They're
else.
they're lying
NASA's
to
lying?
us. They're lying to us.
According to Eddie Bravo on this episode of Rogan, everything that you've been hearing from NASA is actually not real, and that's because they have some nefarious goals in mind. See, according to him, their whole plan is to set up a one-world government, and what better way to make us trust the government than a threat from outer space?
The only way to make a one world government work is to have the people embrace it. They have to want it because nobody wants it. So the trick is to make people want it, to embrace it. There's only one way. The only way. And they've known this forever. The Vatican knew this. The Vatican, the Pope wanted to rule the world. They all knew it, but they couldn't do it. They all knew it, but they knew one way, but there's no way how they're going to pull it off.
What's the one way, man?
The only way is if there was some extraterrestrial threat from up above us. That would be the only way to have everyone embrace the one world government.
Well, there you have it. Watch out for UFOs because according to Rogan, it may just be the government infringing upon your freedom.